It's as if I spoke with an oracle in one of the last videos. Home Assistant has introduced new hardware, or rather its first own hardware for voice assistants. So now it's possible for you to go to the Home Assistant website and buy your own voice assistant. It comes fully assembled, and you basically just need to set it up and connect it to your own Home Assistant. I'll tell you how the whole thing looks, how it works, and so on after the intro. As always, enjoy. Here is the package. Of course, I'm not too shy to try it out or to right at Christmas because it's almost like a little Christmas gift. This is what it looks like. It's called Home Assistant Voice, but beware, preview edition. That means the whole thing is not final yet, so they will be shipping it. There will be a lot of software updates for the whole thing, and maybe there will be a revision too at some point if they realize that the hardware might not be sufficient or something like that. First of all, I have to say, I watched the entire live stream and they really put a lot of effort into building this hardware in such a way that it offers something for everyone, and above all, to make the other voice assistants that you could buy so far much better. Apparently, a lot of thought went into the packaging design alone, but I'm not going to make a big deal out of that now. I would say, let's just unbox this thing here. We then receive some papers and a sticker, and there we have the Home Assistant voice device right away. Personally, I have to say, I would have at least wished for a USB-C cable. They said they didn't include it for environmental reasons. I think you can always use one, but well, we'll just have to use our own cable. They also talked about the design for quite a while. I would at least briefly address that here. On the back, we have, well, I would say a frosted glass-like plastic. You can kind of make out the hardware underneath, but not see it clearly. Then on the bottom, we have a 3.5mm jack where we can connect external speakers and a USB-C port, which we can use to install firmware updates and also to power the device. Otherwise, there are no additional ports here. On the top, we have a mesh behind which the speaker is hidden. And on the left side, as seen from above, we have a mute switch. Similar to how it used to be on the iPhone, you can slide it up to actually disconnect the microphone from the circuit board so this device can no longer listen. No matter what we do, we can't disable it via software until we unlock this mute switch again. And then we move on to the top side. On the top side, we have two holes, one on the right and one on the left for microphones. The special feature is that they have built in a special chip that is supposed to significantly improve the microphone quality. It also ensures that no matter how and from what distance you speak into the device, the volume that reaches the circuit board is always the same. And even if music is played through the device, it can filter out this music again so that the microprocessor always receives a clear voice. This is why the voice recognition is supposed to work extremely well. And additionally, we have a scroll wheel on top, reminiscent of the old iPods, which is very satisfying to turn. It makes a slight clicking sound and also gives a clicking sensation when you turn it up or down. Theoretically, however, it is not just a volume rocker, but rather a multifunctional wheel. And then we have a button in the middle that performs various actions. By default, it activates the voice assistant or cancels actions if they are currently running, and it can also be customized with your own functions through automation by double-clicking or long pressing. However, these are just the standard actions that are essentially programmed into it. In the end, it's just a regular microcontroller that you could completely program with your own software using ESP Home. Oh, and I almost forgot. On the underside, we also have a so-called Grove port, an expansion slot that we could break out of the casing. Then it is exposed and we could connect a whole range of additional modules such as a temperature sensor, a display, and so on directly to this device, significantly expanding the functionality of the voice assistant. But that's it for the hardware for now. Now, I would say let's set up the device and see what it can do in practice. Because Home Assistant has put a lot of thought into making the device highly expandable, while also ensuring that the average user who has just managed to set up Home Assistant can set up this device as easily as possible without having to worry too much. So I'm now going to connect the device to the power supply.
A very brief interruption on my own behalf, and first of all, thank you for watching these videos. As a token of appreciation, I would like to link an Amazon voucher here for you. The first person to redeem it is basically lucky. And if you want to be part of it next time and have the chance to win something like this, then feel free to click subscribe here and help me improve this statistic a bit. Thank you very much in advance, and now let's continue with the video.
To set everything up now, we need to go into the Home Assistant app and then under Devices and Services as we are used to, and up here among the discovered devices, a Home Assistant and then some number should appear. Here we click on Add and then we see something completely new, namely a pop-up that opens where we need to enter our Wi-Fi data. Once we have completed that, it automatically connects to the voice assistant. We now need to confirm the authorization by pressing this button here. Now it connects to the Wi-Fi network. And if that worked, we will receive the message Wi-Fi successfully connected here. We click on Continue. Then we can say, would you like to set up ESP Home? I say, okay, here now. Here I can specify which devices I would like to add to ESP Home. I only want to add Home Assistant voice here now. Now it automatically searches for updates and installs them directly afterwards. Then the device will restart once. So now we can test it by saying, okay, Nabu. And now we could change the activation word to another one. For example, hey Jarvis. Hey Jarvis. And I would have to say it again now to really confirm it. But for now, I'll stick with okay, Nabu. Okay, Nabu. Okay, Nabu. And with that, the setup is complete. Now I can add the whole thing to a section. And now I have the choice here. Either set up the whole thing, DIY by setting up Whisper, meaning text to speech, speech to text, etc. myself, or use the Home Assistant cloud. This way, most services are outsourced and hosted in the cloud by Home Assistant. Of course, this costs money, but it is also significantly easier to set up and faster if you have a slow system like a Raspberry Pi on site. I would also like to do a speed test just to see how fast Home Assistant Cloud is compared to self-hosted, depending on the hardware used. If you're interested in this topic, feel free to write it in the comments. For now, I'm using the DIY version, which I have already set up. Now it shows me everything I have here again. So I have selected the wake word here. My Home Assistant pipeline is now using the preferred one. However, I could also manually select my main pipeline, and then the voice I previously set up will be displayed here. Now I can click on Done, and with that, the setup is complete. So the part is now set up, and from now on, I have a finished voice assistant here. So the setup really resembles a commercial system that you can buy somewhere, both in terms of processing and control. Now that we have set everything up, I would say let's turn up the volume a bit. You can already see how it feels here. I think it looks really, really good that you can see how high the volume is. You can press here to trigger it and press again to cancel. We can also test it out, okay? Nabu. So, and then we would cancel the whole thing. Yes, and now I would say, let's just test it. Okay, Nabu. Add Shield to the shopping list. Shield added. Yes, and as you can see, the whole thing works relatively quickly. It depends on what kind of hardware you have. I have to honestly say, the speaker is not exactly top-notch. But they also mention that this is a preview edition, and you have the option to connect any speakers via the 3.5mm jack. The most important thing is the microphones that are built in here. So they themselves say that the whole thing is designed primarily for simple speech. If you wanted to play music, the quality would not be sufficient, I have to say. But if you just want to use it as a regular voice assistant, then this is completely adequate. I have now reconnected the whole thing with OpenAir. We could now also ask completely normal questions, like for example, okay, Nabu, who is the President of the United States? The President of the United States is Joe Biden. Okay, we get a somewhat outdated answer, but at least it's an answer. So as of today, this is probably the smartest voice assistant you can buy. I'll definitely link it for you in the video description below if you want to check it out yourself. Finally, let's come to the conclusion. Of course, we still need to get to the conclusion. And unfortunately, we have to address a topic that I've been skirting around a bit, and that is, of course, the price. Currently, Home Assistant Voice is available in Germany for around 60 euro. And one has to say, if you compare it with other voice assistants, it is indeed on the more expensive side. The only thing that comes to mind spontaneously, which would be even more expensive, besides the large devices like a big Google Home or a large Alexa, is the Apple HomePod Mini. However, with all these somewhat more expensive devices, it must be said that the voice quality is significantly better. So if we compare this routine with the alternative systems, one has to say that either the hardware is simply not large enough or the price is relatively high. It should also be mentioned that the big tech companies are incurring massive losses with their voice assistants because they sell them at a lower price and hope that the data they can sell will recoup the cost. So for anyone who is willing to prioritize their data privacy, this device is definitely very useful. Above all, I find it good, even if it's a bit more expensive, that there is finally hardware available that can be recommended to anyone starting with Home Assistant BA and who is not willing to 3D print, solder, and so on. So you can really just buy the device, set it up directly with an app, using a guide, and immediately start with your own voice assistant. And if we look more into the DIY area, we also have to say that this is one of the few projects that exist in this direction at all. So outside of the Home Assistant world, I wouldn't even know of any such ready-made even device available for purchase. So hats off to what Home Assistant has accomplished there. I am really extremely excited about what this will bring in the future. As I said, I would like to make a comparison to simply see how fast the parts are, maybe especially in comparison to other voice assistants. If you're interested in that, feel free to write it in the comments and, of course, your opinion on this device. Would you get it? Would it be too expensive for you? Is the price justified? Feel free to let me know. And then I would say that's it for this video. That was all summarized a bit more concisely. As I said, the device just arrived and we are currently in the Christmas holiday. So I would say I'll continue celebrating now and wish you wonderful holidays. We'll see each other again in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye.